If you love podcasting as much as I do, you may be considering starting your own. Starting a podcast has been one of the best decisions I have ever made, but getting started can feel overwhelming. Buzzsprout is the easiest and most professional way to start a podcast. Buzzsprout has helped over 100,000 people launch their own podcasts, including me. Buzzsprout will launch your show on all of the major podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Play, to name a few. You also get a podcast website, audio players that can be dropped into other websites, and stats of who is listening, and so much more. Buzzsprout also publishes blog posts, podcasts, and YouTube videos every week. They are great tools and have useful information from expert podcasters. To start your own podcast and get a $20 Amazon gift card, follow the link in our show notes. This lets Buzzsprout know that I sent you, and it supports my show. Buzzsprout, the easiest way to start a podcast.
Crime, Wine, and Chaos contains adult language and graphic content. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey, Chaos Kids. I'm Naomi.
And I'm Amber, and this is Crime, Wine, and Chaos. Hey, sister.
Hey, sissy.
How's it going?
Oh, it's going. It's going.
It's been a day, yes?
It's been a day, a week, a month, a year. It's definitely been.
It's been the whole Friends theme song, huh?
Basically.
God,
basically.
I'm sorry. Tell me.
No. You know what? It's good. No, things are good. It's just, I am still in hibernation mode, or at least that's where I want to be, but I can't be yet. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm kind of like just holding out for a little holiday break, and I'll be really happy when I can spend multiple days in a row in pajamas.
Oh my gosh.
Not really do much.
Yeah.
Maybe binge a show I haven't seen yet, you know, that kind of thing. That's what I'm looking forward to. Yeah.
Yeah. I love all that
about
for you. I feel the same way, although there's no time off in sight for me. I just moved, and I don't want to really complain about anything because I am very privileged and I need to check my privilege. But I am overwhelmed.
Yeah, in your fancy house.
We really lucked out, and I'm grateful for that. But it's just it's very overwhelming. And
moving is a big thing.
It is a big thing, and I have a little bit of imposter syndrome in here. Like, people made a mistake and gave us the keys to this house. You know?
Yeah, I get it.
So
I totally
I'm grappling with that, and I really liked my cozy little apartment, and so I'm struggling with that, the weird noises, and the full-on 20-minute ordeal to lock up at night. It's just, it all feels very foreign to me.
It's new. It's new. And and I get it. I mean, you know, I've been in the same weird, cozy apartment for like 11 years. So any move anywhere after this is going to feel really weird when it happens. I totally get it.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
I forget where I'm at when I wake up in the morning for a second, because I don't recognize
it's like
my
sleeping
environment.
in a hotel. Mm-hmm. What city am I in? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's all that
exactly.
And stressful, but I'm grateful, and it's, you know, it's good. The first order of business was I did get my studio set up so that we didn't miss a step here.
Cousin Jeremy came and did the hookup. Got you all set up. Yep.
Sitting in a heap of boxes, but we've connected and we're here.
Yes, we're happening. It's happening. We're recording.
We are.
What are you drinking?
Thank you for asking. I am drinking, it's called Red Boar, and it's a Spanish red, and it is real fucking delicious. It's a Vino de España.
Okay, I don't know what any of that means, but
neither do I.
I'm really happy for you. I'm really happy for you.
Thank you. I cracked open the bottle promptly right after therapy, and we're just going to really go in.
Oh, hey, I had therapy today, too.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I don't know if that was planned well or poorly on our part.
I don't know. There was no plan here. There's no plan here. It just happened.
I know.
No, it's good, though. No, you know what? Therapy is good. I've never met a single person who didn't actually need therapy. And if somebody tells you they don't need it, then they probably need it even more.
I was just going to say, those are the people they need it the most. Yeah. I know. As I was coming up to do this, I was telling Michael, I'm like, I've got to immediately transition into like funny. Like what?
I mean, some of my therapy is pretty fucking hilarious. Sometimes,
you know
I'll
what?
tell you
Because the truth is always what's the funniest.
Ludicrous,
yes.
Ridiculous. Yeah, yeah.
I do want to say, because we were talking about it on our last episode, and I just read an article today. The Boy in the Box.
Oh, I had that written down too.
Okay,
you go.
Joseph Augustus Zarelli.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he was 4
years old.
But they're not. I know, but they're not. At this time, they're not releasing his parentage. They're not giving any other information on that. Although it would be weird if somebody out there didn't know who that was and didn't come forward. Somebody has to know who that kid was.
A 4-year-old, yeah. And but are any of those people still alive? I
mean, I don't know, or plugged in enough to even,
Yeah, and it
who knows?
Sounds like it was via genealogy that they were able to figure that out. So obviously he's got somebody floating around that he's related to.
That's in systems. Yeah, that's in DNA systems. Yeah, totally.
Oh,
yeah,
4 years
I know.
old.
I know. That's crazy. Yeah. But, that's what these genealogy, DNA forensics or whatever are getting, being able to do is just kind of blowing my mind. I feel like more and more we're going to see stuff like this where we're going to find out things. I mean, it just keeps happening over and over now.
The detail that must go into that kind of work.
Oh, I've listened to, there's a podcast that I've listened to, the Ties That Bind. I can't remember. The Ties That Find. Anyway, this is just a one-woman show, and she does. It's a podcast, and she covers specifically cold cases that are solved through these methods. And in her first couple episodes, she goes into detail on the process to figure this stuff out, and it's really painstaking and really slow. It's bet. Really hard work. Yeah.
I bet.
It is not a small endeavor. Every single one of these takes time and detail orientation. I mean, it's just a whole process.
Yeah. Wow. I can't even imagine.
Well, there was another crazy, solved case that came up yesterday. I think the article came out. This guy, Robert Hoagland, who'd gone missing from Newtown, Connecticut about 9 years ago. And his case was covered by, The Trail Went Cold covered the case. I think Vanished might have covered the case. It was a big time missing persons case. This husband and father to 3 boys just up and disappeared. He was seen on a video, security camera, maybe in a gas station or something, and then nothing.
Gosh.
And he's just gone. He was found this week, deceased in Rock Hill, New York, and he had been living a whole new life under the name Richard King.
Oh my gosh. And how old was he when he went missing?
Well, I mean, he had a wife and 3 kids who were grown boys now. So he was, He fully
did this. Wow.
He was one of those cases that you just can't believe it's true.
Yeah.
Of people who just walked away from their life and started over somewhere.
Oh, because that's so rare, despite the fact that, oftentimes law enforcement wants to say that
they want to say that's probably what happened.
Yeah, it's so rare. And it's harder than people realize to actually be able to do that.
I can't even imagine. I literally was like, how do you even do that in this day and age? I wouldn't even know how to do that. I wouldn't even know where to start.
I wouldn't either.
How do you assume a new identity? How do you even do that?
Yeah. There's an electronic trail of everything you do.
Yeah, so you start over without electronic anything, but how do you get a job? You don't have Social Security.
I know.
How do you find people that even I don't even know.
I don't know either.
I don't know.
Wow.
But that happened. That really happened. So people were kind of blown away by that, especially the people that had covered it and followed it and
bananas.
Anyway, that's crazy.
That is bananas.
Are you ready for a crime story, Sissy?
I am.
Okay, let's get into it. I've got a story for you. This is an old-timey story.
Okay.
About a woman named Sarah Malcolm. And the question becomes, was she menstruating or was she a murderer?
Oh, well, fuck. I mean,
okay.
Could be both.
Could be both.
Okay.
All right. So Sarah Malcolm was born in Durham in the northeast of England around 1710. Who are described as a, quote, respectable couple. Her father had an estate worth £100 a year, which is about $19,000 in today's money.
Okay.
But he was not a frugal man, and their money ran out. So he and Sarah's mother packed up their daughter Sarah, and they moved to Dublin, as her mother was Irish, and they could find work and a place to live there. So Sarah was essentially raised in Dublin.
Okay.
Her father set up a business there that afforded Sarah an education. Well, as much of a, good education as a girl was allowed to have in the 1700s.
Oh, sure. So she made it through the 4th grade. Cool.
Right.
Okay.
And around the time Sarah was reaching young womanhood, whatever that means, like
Yuck.
15, 20, I don't even know.
That phrase makes my skin crawl.
Right.
Okay.
Young womanhood.
Yeah, I don't like it.
She traveled with her parents to London. So apparently they had some business dealings to deal with there. And Sarah stayed in London, going into the workforce as a domestic servant for a series of good families. And supposedly she really enjoyed that work.
Okay.
Not long after, her father returned to Dublin. His primary business remained in Dublin, and that was right after her mother passed away. And Sarah stayed in London, right? But she didn't do as well in London when she was on her own. She was able to get work as a server in a low-class pub called the Black Horse, and then she became a laundress or a charwoman. I found multiple stories about this case where she was referred to as one or the other. And the best I can tell, she was basically a housekeeper or a cleaning person.
What's a charwoman?
That's what a charwoman is like a housekeeper. Yeah. I think part of their duties is to build and stoke and tend to the fire in the fireplace.
Okay.
That might be where that comes from.
Okay, I feel a little bit less stupid because you said a charwoman, and I was like, she's out there grilling. I don't know.
I know, right?
What the fuck? Okay. That's a whole ass job.
I don't even, right? So she would do the laundry or the cleaning, other servant type work for some of the people who lived in the rooms above Inns of the Court. And she may have also had a room there herself. It's not entirely clear. Okay. So one of her employers up until December of 1732 was Mrs. Lydia Duncombe.
Oh.
Mrs. Duncombe was around 80 years old, infirm, and pretty well off, at least in comparison to Sarah Malcolm. Mrs. Duncombe shared her lodgings with 2 other women, 60-year-old Mrs. Harrison, who was also quite infirm, and a young servant, 26-year-old Anne Nanny Price. That was her nickname, was Nanny.
At 26?
They were all in different articles. They were all referred to, all 3 of them were referred to as like spinsters.
At 26? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I know.
Well, then I'm about to go into the light if that's a spinster.
You and me both, sister.
God.
Every day's a gift.
Every day is a gift. Jesus.
I'm too close to that. Okay. Mrs. Harrison is described as a lifelong friend of Mrs. Duncombe. So Mrs. Duncombe was a widow, and Mrs. Harrison, I don't know how long they'd been living together. I think it was different back then. I mean, part of me wants to say like, oh, they were actually like, if it were a different time, they would have just been a couple.
Yeah,
right? But
sure.
Who knows? I don't know. Old spinsters did tend to live together anyway, right?
Yeah, sure.
On the afternoon of February 5th, 1733, so this would have been like little under 2 months since Sarah Malcolm had stopped working there. A friend of Mrs. Duncombe, an elderly woman named Mrs. Love, arrived at Mrs. Duncombe's chambers for a visit. Mrs. Duncombe's chambers were on the second or third floor of this building. So she had gone all the way up these stairs to her door. She knocked and knocked and knocked, and no one answered. Mrs. Love was concerned for both the old women in the residence, knowing that both Mrs. Duncombe and Mrs. Harrison were frail and not well in their older age. I think they both spent quite a bit of time in their beds, right?
Right.
She thought maybe Nanny was so busy caring for them that she didn't hear the knocks or couldn't come to the door, or maybe that she had left to go find a doctor or fetch some things for the older women who were stuck in bed and unable to come to the door, right?
Right.
So Mrs. Love went downstairs to find the landlord and ask about whether anyone had seen any of the three women that day, and they had not. The whole building was very quiet, as it was Sunday afternoon, and most of the other lodgers were single men who would be out somewhere eating dinner and whatnot, right?
Right.
So she couldn't really ask around the building because there was no one home to ask. So she went back up the stairs to Mrs. Duncombe's door and knocked some more, and still no answer. And she was getting really worried now. So she left the building to go find another friend of Mrs. Duncombe's, Mrs. Reimer, who was also the executor of Mrs. Duncombe's estate. Not only that, but she kept the key to Mrs. Duncombe's lockbox, or safe, or whatever they called it back then, where Mrs. Duncombe kept all her money. She was clearly a very close and trusted friend. Mm-hmm. So Mrs. Reimer and Mrs. Love returned together to the chambers and tried to force open the door, but they couldn't. So Mrs. Love went looking for anyone else around that might help when she saw Sarah Malcolm in the courtyard below, and she sent her off to go find a locksmith. And Sarah, hied off and very quickly was like, yes, of course. And she returned a bit later with the landlady in tow, but no locksmith could be found. So at this point, there's four women, the landlady, Sarah Malcolm, Mrs. Reimer, and Mrs. Love, and they're all trying to figure out how to get into these chambers and check on these old ladies. So the landlady gets the idea that she can go into the empty rooms across the landing and shimmy across the ledge outside the window to one of the windows to Mrs. Duncombe's place.
No.
Yes.
Old ladies shouldn't shimmy.
I don't know if the landlady is an old lady.
Is she over 26? Because if she is, she fucking is.
She's a spinster. She should just lay down and die now. She has no value left in this world.
Shimmy time is over, landlady. Lay down. Lay down. Jesus Christ. Okay.
So they heard her progress as she broke into the rooms of Mrs. Duncombe, and then they heard her scream.
Uh-oh.
She threw open the chamber door to the other three women, and she yelled, "They're all murdered!"
Holy shit.
All three women were dead in their beds. Nanny was covered in blood around her neck, which had obviously been slit. The other two women had been strangled, although the marks on Mrs. Duncombe were so light that it was surmised that, as frail as she was, likely the weight of the murderer on her chest was enough to kill her.
Oh, no.
I know.
God. Also, I'm getting hardcore, like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory vibes when you're talking about three women in the same room in bed.
Well, they are not in one room.
Oh.
There's like a couple of rooms. They're not all in the same room.
I was like, what?
There were multiple rooms to Mrs. Duncombe's chambers.
Got it. Okay. All right.
I mean, when you think about it, it's more like they're kind of like apartments, right?
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So the motive of the callous murders was clear. Mrs. Duncombe's lockbox was pried open and all her money was missing, along with her long deceased husband's silver tankard, which is basically like a beer stein. It's a big, like mug, right, with a handle. According to one account, Sarah Malcolm was quite vocal during this time, pointing out various things about the crime scene, alluding to what she said was obviously multiple murderers, and lamenting how easy it would have been to get into the chambers either the way the women just had or through the chimney.
What?
Yeah, because the fireplace was so big.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
She even pointed out that since the main door was locked, they must not have exited that way, but that was quickly debunked when someone demonstrated that it could be locked with a string from the outside.
Yeah, or somebody had a key, right?
Right.
Jesus Christ.
So anyway, word of the murderers spread, and of course everyone in the neighborhood was shaken and talking about it. One of Sarah's other employers, Mr. Gahagan, had interacted with Sarah earlier in the day, prior to the discovery of the bodies. She had bought and made him and his friend, Mr. Carroll, some tea and tended to Mr. Gahagan's fire. And then he and Mr. Carroll went out for the day and into the evening, as lots of these single men do on Sundays. They don't cook for themselves. They go to pubs and public houses and things, and right? So they were out and about all day, and it was while they were out eating and drinking and hanging out that they heard about the murders. And when they returned to their lodgings after 1 a.m, Mr. Carroll came to his door to find it open. A fire burning in his fireplace. A candle lit on the table, and sitting at the table was none other than Sarah Malcolm.
Oh, what's Sarah doing?
Yeah, that's kind of what he wanted to know. Mr. Carroll asked her what the fuck she was doing there.
Yeah.
And she muttered something about having things to collect.
Okay.
When he asked her if anyone had been caught for the murders, she said that, quote, Mr. Knight, who has chambers below Mrs. Duncombe, has been absent a few days, and he is the main suspect.
Ah, okay, Sarah, pointing fingers. It's not a good look, spinster.
Right. But seeing how the working theory so far was that someone who knew Mrs. Duncombe was probably her murderer, Mr. Carroll told Sarah Malcolm that no one acquainted with the murdered women was welcome at his house until the murderer was caught.
Well, no shit.
And she should get, and she should get her shit in GTFO.
Yeah. Shimmy your way back up the chimney and get the fuck out of my room. God.
But he was suspicious. So he got some night watchmen to come up to his chambers. And when he returned with them, Sarah was being pretty sketch. She was rummaging around in a dresser drawer with some linens, which she was quick to claim as hers.
Okay.
Mr. Carroll then started looking into his closet and found that some of his really nice clothes were missing. He confronted her, and she admitted that she'd stolen some things to pawn them, and would he please forgive her?
Oh, yeah, I stole some shit. Sorry about it.
Right?
Okay.
He was becoming less inclined to forgive her or give her any allowances at this point. They also found a pair of earrings in the drawer she'd been rummaging in, but she claimed those were hers and promptly shoved them into her bra, such as that was in those days.
Wow.
Then Carroll noticed an odd-looking bundle at the bottom of the closet, and he kicked it, asking Sarah Malcolm what it was, and she said it was nothing but some dirty linens wrapped in an old gown.
Uh-oh.
And she clearly did not want him looking there. He did more searching of his rooms and found more things missing, so he had the watch take her away. After the guards or the police or whoever the watch is left with Sarah, Carroll and Gahagan were all amped up, and they kept poking around his place, and they found more evidence of weirdness. More bundles, including one with blood stains, and a silver tankard with a bunch of dried blood on the handle. All this shit stashed around his place. Now these guys are convinced, right? Sarah Malcolm is beyond sus at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So they run off to the watchtower with all this evidence, and they confront her about it. They accuse her of the murders, and they show the bloody handle of the tankard, and they claim she reached for it in an attempt to wipe the blood off.
Okay.
And then she said the tankard was hers, given to her by her mother, and the blood was just from pricking her own finger earlier that day.
Okay.
So at this point, she's searched by the guards more thoroughly, and they find money on her, including a green velvet purse full of coins, which she claimed she found in the street. It definitely matched the description of one of the things in the lockbox.
She's like not even good at this. Okay.
No, and none of them believed her. So it was later determined that while the green purse could not be definitively identified as belonging to Mrs. Duncombe, the tankard had initials engraved on it that made it clear that was hers.
Oh.
And the linens as well.
Oh my God.
And as far as I can tell, this is the evidence they had on her.
That's quite a bit.
They found more money on her person once they got to locking her up to await her trial. And it was found in her hair.
I can relate. I get it.
But I don't think they found all the money.
She had it in there real good. In her hair?
In her hair, yeah. Sarah Malcolm claimed her innocence to the very last. Her story was this. She had fallen into a friend group with Mrs. Mary Tracy and Mary's two friends, brothers James and Thomas Alexander. These three were not the best influence on Sarah. They were pushing her to steal from her former clients since she had easy access to their rooms and their things. And Sarah eventually did agree to help them rob one of these lodgers she worked for. That would be Mrs. Duncombe. Mm-hmm. This crew of would-be thieves made a plan on the 28th of January to rob these women and scheduled it for the following week. Look, we're putting the organized into organized crime. I was
like, wow, we're clocking in for this. All right.
Yes. So February 4th, Sarah gets the two brothers into Mrs. Duncombe's lodging, and then they hide somewhere until all the women were asleep. Once asleep, the brothers let Mary in, and Sarah says she waited on the stairs as the lookout. She never went inside the rooms.
Okay.
Mary and the brothers would score 300 pounds, silver wares, and other items. Later, Sarah would insist that she remained on the stairs for the entirety of the burglary, and after the burglary was done, they ran off to a dark place in the city somewhere to divvy up the spoils, which is how Sarah ended up with those items that did not belong to her. She maintained to the very end that those other three were the murderers.
Huh. Okay. I mean, it sounds plausible.
Could be.
Yeah. Where does the menstruating come in? Thank you. Okay.
Sarah was charged with 3 counts of murder, breaking and entering, and theft of a huge list of items and monies. She pled not guilty to all these charges, and all of these charges were capital offenses.
Shit.
Meaning she could hang for any one of them.
God, and back then, if you were sentenced to that, it was like day of. Like, here we go. I mean, there was no fucking appeals and shit. It's like, we're doing this.
Well, there's definitely no appeals, for sure.
Yeah.
So Sarah did not have a public defender. She defended herself, and she put up a good fight, attempting to discredit the prosecution's witnesses. And when the question of the blood-stained linens came up, Sarah Malcolm claimed that that blood was not from the victims, but rather from her own period.
Oh.
Now, I originally found this story on accident when I ran across a thread posted on Twitter by the Vagina Museum.
Perfect.
Which is in London, and I think we need to go there. According to tweets in the Vagina Museum's thread, this is what I got. Quote, "We don't know much about how people dealt with their periods in the past because due to taboos, it often wasn't written down. This means one of the most direct accounts of dealing with periods in the 18th century comes from a murder trial."
Holy shit.
When Malcolm herself took the stand, she began, quote, "Modesty might compel a woman to conceal her own secrets if necessity did not oblige her to the contrary, and 'tis necessity that obliges me to say that what has been taken for the blood of the murdered person is nothing but the free gift of nature." End quote.
Wow. Good for her.
Within her eloquent defense, Malcolm described how she handled her period. She had been wearing her apron underneath her shift, with the whole setup beneath her clothes. This would serve to protect her outer garments from the bloodstains. Malcolm told the court that the positions of the bloodstains were more consistent with menstruation. Quote, "If it is supposed that I killed her with my clothes on, my apron indeed might be bloody, but how should the blood come upon my shift? If I did it in my shift, how would my apron be bloody or the back part of my shift? And whether I did it dressed or undressed, why was not the neck and sleeves of my shift bloody as well as the lower parts? End quote.
She's got a good point.
According to the court records, Malcolm was probably right in her insistence that the blood was only on the lower parts of her garments. No witness could conclusively say there was blood on the linens on the upper part of her body.
Wow.
So that's from the Vagina Museum. Even with this counter evidence, Sarah Malcolm was found guilty. While she awaited execution, a fairly well-known painter came to paint her portrait, and eventually she was publicly hung like they did back then. Apparently, there's quite a bit out there written about her. I didn't track it all down, and I've summarized quite a bit here. This could have been like its own hour. But over and over again, she's called a big fat liar, that she reveled in her lies. She lied about everything to everyone all the time. And she was so clearly guilty, they all said she did it all on her own. And those other three didn't have anything to do with it.
Wow. I mean...
But when I got done with everything, I just wasn't totally convinced. And here's the deal. I know. And here's the deal. In this day and age, they would have to, I mean, there was no DNA, right? There was no blood testing. There was no forensics going on. It was just like everything they had on her was circumstantial.
Right.
And, you know, the truth is that young unmarried women who work for a living were seen as lesser beings.
Of course. Yep.
Right. So she was an easy target. I mean, maybe she did participate in the murders. Maybe it went down the way she said it did. Maybe those three others got away with helping her with murder. Who knows? I don't think we really know.
Nope.
I don't know how much I believe that. I don't know how much I believe that she was guilty or not. Anyway, that is the story of Sarah Malcolm.
Sister.
Menstruating or murderer?
Fuck. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm leaning towards menstruating.
I mean...
Wow, she was sounded like quite the badass and quite the feminist of that time.
She
with
was
her
definitely,
testimony.
Yeah, she was definitely really eloquent. She was really charming. And so like some of it does point to like she could have been the one. She could have been a mastermind. But at the same time it's like, can you be a mastermind and then be that sloppy about it?
Right? Like why is she stashing evidence in dude's room? Too. Like,
right.
The whole thing is like, she sounds like she was very intelligent. She could have been, it could have been a group and she could have been the scapegoat.
Could have been. She could have been part of all of it and she was just trying to save her own ass because she was part of it.
Yeah. And she was the only person convicted.
Yes. Those other three, nothing happened to them.
Oh, man. That's kind of
And like I said, I don't think they ever found all that money.
Right.
It's like, where's the rest of that money?
No shit. Oh, wow. That was a good one.
Oh, good. I'm glad you liked it.
I love all that. Fuck, sister.
Good.
You need a refill on your water or how are we doing?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Great. I've got some chaos for you.
Ooh, I love a good chaos.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you about a town called Vernon, Florida, which is also known as Nub City.
I'm sorry, what?
Nub City. Have you heard of this?
It's a nubbin? Is it a nubbin?
Uh-huh. I'm going to tell you about...
Nipple. Is it a nipple? You're going to tell me about Nipple City.
Let me tell you about Nipple City. No. I mean, I'll tell you, okay? All right. So,
I'm sorry. Nub.
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
So
it's like Wookin'
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's exactly what it is. Oh my God. Fuck. Okay. I'm going to try and get through this. Okay. So in the late 1950s and 60s, the Florida Panhandle made up 2/3 of all loss of limb accident claims in the U.S.
I'm sorry, 2/3?
Uh-huh. Just in the Panhandle.
Okay, I don't want to get ahead of us here, but I feel like there's some sort of like really dangerous type of industry that's going on in the Panhandle? No?
All of this came from one place, and that's Vernon, Florida.
Okay, Vernon. Oh my God, that's why it's called Nub.
Yes.
Oh my God. That's awful.
I know. This is so bad. So
okay, keep going.
So Vernon, Florida is about 90 miles west of Tallahassee. And there was a widespread insurance scam happening in Vernon where people would intentionally dismember themselves for a payout.
What?
And this is how they got the name Nub City.
What?
Okay, so this is so bad. So, with the steamboats, railroads, and sawmills all closing, it left the residents without income, and the economy was in like dire straits.
Oh no.
Uh-huh. More than half of the population was on state assistance. And for the residents of Vernon that were able to find work, they were forced to find jobs in larger cities, like 30 to 40 miles away.
Oh, so big commutes.
Yep. It's not clear how this idea initially got traction, but it is believed that it started with someone legitimately losing a limb and getting a large payout, and then other residents noticed that that's how that worked.
Payouts from who?
I'll tell you. From who? From the nubbins. Hold on.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. So, with dwindling job opportunities of their small town, the chance of receiving a large sum of money for mutilating oneself became increasingly tempting for the people of Vernon.
Oh my God, this is the horrors of capitalism.
Yes. I know.
Oh my God.
Uh-huh. This is a quote from All That's Interesting. Quote, some Nub Club, that's what we call them, Nub Club members hacked and sawed their own limbs off, but most took the relatively easier method of shooting themselves with a shotgun.
What? What?
The Nub Club.
No. This is really disturbing.
I know. I'm sorry. I
took us on a jaunty little old-timey murder trail.
And I took you to
and
Nub
now
City.
You're telling me about self-mutilating
I'm sorry.
nubbins. God.
Okay. One claimant lost his hand, and he said it was while he was shooting at a hawk. And another one lost his foot when he said he mistook it for a squirrel.
What? Who is making these payouts, though? They have to have been paying into some kind of, like, disability insurance for this?
Mm-hmm. So, these low-stake claims, like a hand or a foot, usually paid between $5,000 and $10,000. And so the residents of Nub City started getting bolder with what they were willing to do.
Well, wait, $5,000 or $10,000 in the late 50s and the early 60s, like, what's that?
Oh, you want me to do an inflation calculation? Oh, no.
Hold, please.
It's a green velvet bag full of coins.
$5,000 in 1960 is equivalent in purchasing power to about $50,339 today.
That shouldn't be true. That's gross. But thank you for that.
So that's $50,000 to $100,000 for a hand or a foot.
Right. Okay. So residents would oftentimes take out policies just days before an accident, making sure to include accidental dismemberment in their policy.
Oh my God. Mm-hmm. They did. Okay.
Yeah. So like the squirrel foot guy, his policy was taken out just 12 hours before the accident.
Oh my God. Stop.
Yep. So this guy, John Joseph Healy, he's an insurance investigator for Continental National American Insurance Group, and he's sent to Vernon to investigate after several of these large claims have been rolling in. And this is one of the funniest quotes. He said, quote, "To sit in your car on a sweltering summer evening on the main street of Nub City, watching anywhere from 8 to a dozen cripples walking along the street gives the place a ghoulish, eerie atmosphere."
Oh my God.
I know.
Oh my God.
Uh-huh. In one case, former insurance agent Murray Armstrong said a farmer was awarded more than $1 million despite having a tourniquet in his pocket at the time of the accident. He said that he had it in his pocket in case of a snake bite.
He just happened to have a tourniquet in his pocket.
I never leave the house without a
Everyone should
tourniquet.
carry a tourniquet. No, I mean, really, you should have that in your first aid kit in your car. That's a real thing. Especially in this country, you never know when you're going to get shot and you're going to need one. But anyway.
Well, that was real fucking dark. Or when you're going to
Well, I mean, that's true.
mistake your foot for a squirrel and then what are
Or
we
if you
going to do?
mistake your foot for a squirrel.
So by the mid-60s, 50 of the 700 residents were members of the Nub Club.
50 out of 700?
Uh-huh.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. It was near impossible to convict them of fraud because jurors had a hard time believing that people would actually willingly amputate their own limbs.
Well, yeah, because that is insane.
I know.
There's a condition where people feel like a certain part of their body doesn't belong to them.
So like the opposite of phantom limb?
Kind of. It's really rare, but it does happen where people think that like one of their hands or one of their feet or one of their legs doesn't belong to their body. It's somebody else's leg or hand is on their body and they really do want the doctor to take it off.
Oh, God.
That's real. But that's also like not the sign of a healthy mind.
It's not. And, that sounds, I mean, no shame in anyone that wants to fucking do whatever they want to their body, but that sounds really like you're starting to dip into cosmetic surgery.
Kind of.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want this face or I don't want this chin or I don't want this nose,
Well, that's different. That's more like to me, that's like in the category of body modification, whereas this is more like, I don't know, like pathological because it's like, it's not just like, it's like this hand is not mine.
Yeah. Well, there are people that do cosmetic surgery and it becomes pathological. I'm just wondering where that
can
line
happen.
is. Yeah.
That can happen.
Or it's
but no one
adjacent to some sort of body dysmorphia. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah, totally. But I can see why a jury would have a hard time understanding anyone doing that on purpose.
Yeah.
I can't imagine doing that on purpose, no matter how desperate I am for money.
My gosh.
That sounds crazy pants to me.
I've even read stories like, I don't remember the guy's name, but like people, God, who was the guy? They did a movie. I think James Franco was in it, but he was like trapped and he had to amputate his arm. You know what I mean? Like
there's like that really famous dramatized movie that was based on a real story.
Yeah. I couldn't even fucking do that. Like
I know.
I can't imagine doing this.
No,
I couldn't do it even if I knew I was going to die if I didn't. I don't think I could do it.
No, I don't think I could either. I don't think I could either.
Yeah. So
next level.
So 50 of the 700 were in the Nub Club. So this finally ended in the late 60s when premium rates became too high. And so insurance companies stopped doing business in Vernon.
Yeah. I'm sorry, you live where? No, we don't cover that town.
There are still many older residents of Vernon wandering around with missing feet and hands and eyes.
Eyes?
Eyes. Yeah.
This is a horror movie.
I know. In the 1980s, documentary filmmaker Errol Morris visited Vernon, Florida in an attempt to do a documentary on Nub City. And he was especially interested in interviewing one particular amputee. He said, quote, "I knocked on the door of a double amputee who was missing an arm and a leg on opposite sides of the body.
Oh my God.
This is the preferred technique so that you could still use a crutch."
I'm sorry, there's a preferred technique?
Yeah, you don't leave one side completely unable to function. Arm from the left, leg from the right. You do the hokey pokey.
Oh my gosh. Stop. I don't even. There's a preferred technique.
I don't know what technique.
I don't know what to do with that information.
Oh my God. So yes, but he was unsuccessful in filming his documentary because the Nub Club didn't appreciate his project and they ran him out of town by threatening him with violence.
I mean, like I said, a horror movie is happening. These people hack off their own limbs. You think they won't come for you?
I know. Yeah, they don't. I thought he was a squirrel. I don't fucking know. Sorry about it.
Exactly.
Oh my
God.
And that's my chaos case. That's all I got on Nub City. Mm-hmm.
I did not.
I know. Tell me.
I can't even.
Oh my God.
I have no words for this.
I don't either.
I can't even fathom it. This doesn't even seem real. I can't believe this is real.
Yeah, it was real.
Well, I mean, desperate people do desperate things.
I know. I felt conflicted about, like, these are people that are in poverty, you know?
Yes.
And so that's fucking lame. And also, I mean, kudos for creativity, I guess.
I mean, you know what? They gamed a system for as long as the system allowed.
Mm-hmm. I just, the image of this investigator sitting in his car in the center of town, watching people just bustle about their day and they're all just like missing limbs and shit is like,
I can't. It's a horror movie. It's like Dawn of the Dead apocalypse. Here. What is going on?
No. I don't know. It's bananas.
I was prepared for some industrial accidents and some, shitty working conditions. This is worse than that.
I mean, you could call it that. I
mean, in a way, it kind of is, right?
Sure.
Ugh.
I am sorry, sister, but
wow.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well,
do you want to take a trip to Nub City?
I don't think so, but we should definitely go to London for all kinds of reasons, but also because we really should go to the Vagina Museum.
Yeah, for sure. You don't think we could swing by Nub City?
I am going to decline.
Okay, great. I might do a detour.
You have fun with that.
Thank you. I will.
But be careful.
We don't like your kind around here. Yeah, no, I'm not going to Nub City. I wish them well.
I mean, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Foxes.
Do you have anything for the good of the order?
I don't. I got nothing.
Okay.
I'm going to go grill. I'm a charwoman or whatever.
Uh-huh. Grill master.
Yeah, that's right.
We got all the socials. We got the Facebooks. We got the Insta and the Twitters.
Mm-hmm.
You can follow Crime, Wine, and Chaos in all those places. You can follow me on Twitter. I think Amber's going to put all that in the show notes.
Check us out.
So come find us.
Find us, and you can visit our website at crimewineandchaos.com.
Right. You can send us complaint mail, hate mail, criticism, cease and desists at crimewineandchaos@gmail.com.
We also accept love letters and kudos. Like if you could sprinkle that in there too.
We do. We do. It would be nice. And as always, tell your friends, like and subscribe, smash the 5-star button, whatever the kids say these days.
That slaps. That's what the kids say. We don't know. Based. We're fucking spinsters.
We're based. That's what it is.
Well,
sister, that was fantastic.
Thanks.
And also totally
fucking
chaotic.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Save your limbs.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Savior.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Crime, Wine, and Chaos. The podcast art was done by Joshua M. Davis. Music by Paul Abner. You can find us on Facebook at Crime, Wine, and Chaos, on Instagram at Crime, Wine, and Chaos Pod, or check out our website at crimewineandchaos.com. Cheers!